have no clue about what I want to do with my life. I have no interest because I saw every subject as a study, as work, and I excelled at every subject just for the purpose of excelling and not learning. And quite frankly, I'm very scared. John Taylor Gatto, a retired school teacher and activist critical of compulsory schooling, asserts, we could encourage the best qualities of youthfulness, curiosity, adventure, resilience, the capacity for surprising insight simply by being more flexible about time, texts, and tests, by introducing kids into truly competent adults, and by giving each student what autonomy he or she needs in order to take a risk every now and then. But we don't do that. Between these cinder block walls, we are all expected to be the same. We are trained to ace every standardized test, and those who deviate and see light through a different lens are worthless to the scheme of public education, and therefore viewed with contempt. H.L. Mencken wrote in the American Mercury for April 1924 that the aim of public education is not to fill the young of a species with knowledge and awaken their intelligence. Nothing could be further from the truth. The aim is simply to reduce as many individuals as possible to the same safe level, to breed and train a standardized citizenry, to put down dissent and originality. That is the aim in the United States. To illustrate this idea, doesn't it perturb you to learn about the idea of critical thinking? Is there really such a thing as uncritically thinking? To think is to process information in order to form an opinion. But if we are not critical when processing this information, are we really thinking? Or are we mindlessly accepting other opinions as truth? I must retrain myself and constantly remember how insane this ostensibly sane place really is. And now here I am in a world guided by fear, a world suppressing the uniqueness that lies inside each of us, a world where we can either accuse to the inhuman nonsense of corporatism and materialism or insist on change. We are not enlivened by an educational system that clandestinely sets us up for jobs that could be automated, for work that need not be done, for enslavement without fervency for meaningful achievement. We have no choices in life when money is our motivational force. Our motivational force ought to be passion, but this is lost from the moment we step into a system that trains us rather than inspires us. We are more than robotic bookshelves, conditioned to blurt out facts we were taught in school. We are all very special. Every human on this planet is very special. So aren't we all deserving of something better? Of using our minds for innovation rather than memorization, for creativity rather than futile activity, for rumination rather than stagnation? We are not here to get a degree to then get a job so we can consume industry-approved placation after placation. There is more and more still. The saddest part is that the majority of students don't have the opportunity to reflect as I did. The majority of students are put through the same brainwashing techniques in order to create a complacent labor force working in the interests of large corporations and secretive government. And worst of all, they are completely unaware of it. I will never be able to turn back these 18 years. I can't run away to another country with a different education system, perhaps meant to enlighten rather than condition. This part of my life is over, and I want to make sure that no other child will have his or her potential suppressed by powers meant to exploit. His or her potential suppressed by powers meant to exploit and control.
Every country on earth at the moment is reforming public education. There are two reasons for it. The first of them is economic. People are trying to work out how do we educate our children to take their place in the economies of the 21st century. How do we do that? Given that we can't anticipate what the economy will look like at the end of next week, as the recent turmoil is demonstrating. How do we do that? The second, though, is cultural. Every country on earth is trying to figure out how do we educate our children so they have a sense of cultural identity and so that we can pass on the cultural genes of our communities while being part of the process of globalization. How do you square that circle? The problem is they're trying to meet the future by doing what they did in the past. And on the way, they're alienating millions of kids who don't see any purpose in going to school. When we went to school, we were kept there with a story, which is if you worked hard and did well and got a college degree, you would have a job. Our kids don't believe that. And they're right not to, by the way. You're better having a degree than not, but it's not a guarantee anymore. And particularly not if the route to it marginalizes most of the things that you think are important about yourself. Some people say we have to raise standards as if this is a breakthrough. You know, like, really, yes, we should. Why would you lower them? You know, I mean, I haven't come across an argument that persuades me of lowering them. But raising them, of course we should raise them. The problem is that the current system of education was designed and conceived and structured for a different age. It was conceived in the intellectual culture of the Enlightenment and in the economic circumstances of the Industrial Revolution. Before the middle of the 19th century, there were no systems of public education. Not really. I mean, you could get educated by Jesuits, you know, if you had the money. But public education, paid for from taxation, compulsory to everybody and free at the point of delivery, that was a revolutionary idea. And many people objected to it. They said it's not possible for many street kids, working class children, to benefit from public education. They're incapable of learning to read and write, and why are we spending time on this? So there's also built into it a whole series of assumptions about social structure and capacity. It was driven by an economic imperative of the time, but running right through it was an intellectual model of the mind, which was essentially the Enlightenment view of intelligence. That real intelligence consists in the capacity for a certain type of deductive reasoning and a knowledge of the classics originally, what we come to think of as academic ability. And this is deep in the gene pool of public education, that there are really two types of people, academic and non-academic, smart people and non-smart people. And the consequence of that is that many brilliant people think they're not, because they've been judged against this particular view of the mind. So we have twin pillars, economic and intellectual. And my view is that this model has caused chaos in many people's lives. It's been great for some. There have been people who have benefited wonderfully from it. But most people have not. Instead, they suffer this. This is the modern epidemic, and it's as misplaced and it's as fictitious. This is the plague of ADHD. Now, this is a map of the incidence of ADHD in America, or prescriptions for ADHD. Don't mistake me here. I don't mean to say there is no such thing as attention deficit disorder. I'm not qualified to say if there is such a thing. I know that a great majority of psychologists and paediatricians think there is such a thing. But it's still a matter of debate. What I do know for a fact is it's not an epidemic. These kids are being medicated as routinely as we had our tonsils taken out. And on the same whimsical basis, and for the same reason, medical fashion. Our children are living in the most intensely stimulating period in the history of the earth. They're being besieged with information and calls for their attention from every platform, computers, from iPhones, from advertising audience, from hundreds of television channels. And we're penalizing them now for getting distracted. From what? You know, boring stuff at school, for the most part. It seems to me it's not a coincidence totally that the incidence of ADHD has risen in parallel with the growth of standardized testing. Now, these kids are being given Ritalin and Adderall and all manner of things, often quite dangerous drugs, to get them focused and calm them down. But according to this, attention deficit disorder increases as you travel east across the country. people start losing interest in Oklahoma. They can hardly think straight in Arkansas. And by the time they get to Washington, they've lost it completely. And there are separate reasons for that, I believe. It's a fictitious epidemic. If you think of it, the arts, and I don't say this exclusively of the arts, I think it's also true of science and of maths, but I say about the arts particularly because they are the victims of this mentality currently, particularly. The arts especially address the idea of aesthetic experience. An aesthetic experience is one in which your senses are operating at their peak, when you're present in the current moment, when you're resonating with the excitement of this thing that you're experiencing, when you are fully alive. An anesthetic is when you shut your senses off and deaden yourself to what's happening. And a lot of these drugs are that. We're getting our children through education by anaesthetizing them. And I think we should be doing the exact opposite. We shouldn't be putting them asleep. We should be waking them up to what they have inside of themselves. But the model we have is this. I believe we have a system of education that is modeled on the interests of industrialism and in the image of it. I'll give you a couple of examples. Schools are still pretty much organized on factory lines, ringing bells, separate facilities, specialized into separate subjects. We still educate children by batches. We put them through the system by age group. Why do we do that? Why is there this assumption that the most important thing kids have in common is how old they are? It's like the most important thing about them is their date of manufacture. What do you mean? Well, I know kids who are much better than other kids at the same age in different disciplines, or at different times of the day, or better in smaller groups than in large groups, or sometimes they want to be on their own. If you're interested in the model of learning, you don't start from this production line mentality. It's essentially about conformity, and increasingly it's about that as you look at the growth of standardized testing and standardized curricula. And it's about standardization. I believe we've got to go in the exact opposite direction. That's what I mean about changing the paradigm. There was a great study done recently of divergent thinking. Published a couple of years ago. Divergent thinking isn't the same thing as creativity. I define creativity as the process of having original ideas that have value. Divergent thinking isn't a synonym, but it's an essential capacity for creativity. It's the ability to see lots of possible answers to a question, lots of possible ways of interpreting a question, to think what Edward de Bono would probably call laterally, to think not just in linear or convergent ways, to see multiple answers, not one. So, there are tests for this. One kind of cod example would be people might be asked to say, how many uses can you think of for a paperclip? Well, those routine questions. Most people might come up with 10 or 15. People who are good at this might come up with 200. And they do that by saying, well, could the paperclip be 200 foot tall and be made out of foam rubber? Does it have to be a paperclip as we know it, Jim? Now, they tested this, and they gave them to 1,500 people. This is in a book called Breakpoint and Beyond. And on the protocol of the test, if you scored above a certain level, you'd be considered to be a genius at divergent thinking. Okay? So my question to you is, what percentage of the people tested, of the 1,500, scored at genius level for divergent thinking? Now, you need to know one more thing about them. These were kindergarten children. So what do you think? What percentage at genius level? 80. 80, I think. 98%. Now, the thing about this was it was a longitudinal study. So they retested the same children 5 years later, ages of 8 to 10. What do you think? 50? They retested them again 5 years later, ages 13 to 15. You can see a trend here, can't you? Now, this tells an interesting story, because you could have imagined it going the other way, couldn't you? You start off not being very good, but you get better as you get older. But this shows two things. One is we all have this capacity, and two, it mostly deteriorates. Now, a lot of things that happen to these kids as they've grown up. A lot. But one of the most important things that happened to them, I'm convinced, is that by now they've become educated. They've spent 10 years at school being told there's one answer, it's at the back. And don't look. And don't copy, because that's cheating. I mean, outside schools, that's called collaboration. But inside schools. Now, this isn't because teachers want it this way. It's just because it happens that way. It's because it's in the gene pool of education. We have to think differently about human capacity. We have to get over this old conception of academic, non-academic, abstract, theoretical, vocational, and see it for what it is, a myth. Secondly, we have to recognize that most great learning happens in groups, that collaboration is the stuff of growth. If we atomize people and separate them and judge them separately, we form a kind of disjunction between them and their natural learning environment. And thirdly, it's crucially about the culture of our institutions, the habits of the institution and the habitats that they occupy.
All right. Welcome to Cold Reality Radio here on the UCY.TV Broadcasting Network. This program is going to be for the week ending 23rd or 24th of June, 2019. And welcome. Again, UCY.TV. Shows are not live. They are uploadable. And they used to be live, and now there's no. It's a little better now. There's not a sense of needing to be live and doing all the things that you would do live. I kind of equated to the stardom of YouTube, where you can sit there and you can listen to. You're searching for something. You're searching for a fix for something. You're searching for an answer to something that someone has, and you've been told. I know it to be true that most things that you want to find out about, you have to have you have to have discernment. But most things that are out there that you can find out about, that you want to learn about, that you can fix something, a computer related issue, a Mac, Windows, whatever. What you have to do is you have to siphon through the absolute, I call it the stardom hurdle, where you're sitting there and you're trying to you're begging these people to get to the point, to get to the fix. Meanwhile, what they're trying to do is, look at me, I'm a star. It's going to take me. This video could be less than 5 minutes. It could be less than 5 minutes, but it's going to take 15 or 20 minutes because I'm on camera. I'm a star. I'm going to play music. I'm going to do all of these other distracting things to produce myself. And on some level, there's nothing really wrong with that, but it adds to the sickness and the disease that technology, YouTube, you are the tube, you are the tube. You get any number of different people out there that have some agenda, and that agenda could be anything. Or, in the past few weeks, we talked about the connection that people have to entertainment, the connection that so many people have towards a Game of Thrones or Marvel. And since the last recording, I did see the Endgame movie. I didn't think it was awful. So many people had problems with it. But again, getting through this hurdle of everyone wanting to be some form of star on their own channel. Some of them are better at it than others. But it's always some kind of long, drawn-out production that basically says, hey, look at me, look what I can do. And there's nothing wrong with that again, but everybody has to, this involvement that people have, which is good, there's nothing wrong with that. But at the core of this entire system, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Facebook, all of these intelligence agency constructs that they designed just for you. And so, I listen to a lot of stand-up comedy. I listen to a lot of there's a performer out there. His name's Anthony Jeselnik. He had a television show on Comedy Central called The Jeselnik Offensive, and his main kind of thing is, I'm going to offend you in a comedic way. And that is his shtick. That's what he does. And it's quite entertaining, honestly. Quite entertaining. And he points out some things, and no one's as good as George Carlin. He took a number of years to be able to get to the point where he was able to get political, and he was able to get really, really deep with people, and they loved it because they loved him. They loved George Carlin because they listened to him because they loved him. And that was the magic that took place every time George Carlin got on stage. They loved him. So he could get inside your head. He could get inside your mind for all of the right reasons. Sure, he had the 7 dirty words you can't say. He pointed out any number of, he was very gross in a lot of different ways, which, is kind of like the Louis C.K. I believe he kind of got that from him. It seems that C.K. is in, kind of in a prison now, because you haven't really heard that much from him. Nobody really wants to talk to him after the whole divide and conquer of the Weinstein, the whole Weinstein kind of rollout, where people have kind of lost the whole. And I believe that where there was more of these things that were brought out, because people didn't want you to really truly focus on the Weinstein. They didn't want you to focus on the Weinstein for too long. It's still the mother of all, incidents that brought all these cowardly fucking people. They'll say that these people are heroes. They'll say that these people are heroes, but it took how many people to say something? How many women had... You had to have one or two things before the cowards came out of their shell, because they didn't want what? They didn't want their careers destroyed. Didn't want their careers to end by criticizing a very powerful element of Hollywood. A very powerful element of Hollywood. And of course it, and then so many other things, Matt Damon, so many other people. So there wasn't, and it was going to happen. And I'm sure every incident that happened post Weinstein revelation was like a breath of fresh air for Harvey, the troll, the powerful troll. And obviously there's more like him in the system. The star of Lost Boys, the young actor, both of them, the Coreys. Apparently one of them was so damaged by it that he wound up taking his life. And his life spun out of control, drugs, because he was probably raped. By this system that these cowards okay, yeah. Was it awful that it happened to them? Yes. Was it good that they said something? Yes. But why didn't others say something sooner? Because they were afraid of the elephant in the room. They were afraid of the elephant in the room and how it would destroy their career. These people are vile. Meryl Streep, all these people that protected the film producer Polanski. I mean, these people, how you can say Polanski and the things that you can support Polanski and the things that he did, known to have done, and then attack, Donald Trump. And I'm not protecting him because I'm tired of it, dude. I'm tired of this fucking farce. Tired of this bullshit fucking system. And what supports this bullshit fucking system? What that young woman in the original recording in the beginning of this broadcast at her, whether it was college or high school graduation, who told it like it was. And then followed up by a very powerful description. If you want to see the video and you want to see the visuals, go to YouTube and type in "Public Education Has Become Indoctrination and Distraction." Public education has become indoctrination and distraction. And as the English gentleman, throws it out there, there's any number of different, I'm sure you've seen it, where there's an artist who's drawing in conjunction with what's being said. It's very powerful, very creative. And so why? What's the problem? And you saw how, and there was even a movie called Divergent. Okay, and why in the Divergent movies, which I saw because I knew what they were, the messages and everything that were in there. Some of them good, some of them bad. If you don't understand it, then you get a whole different understanding. You get a whole different understanding of the Hunger Games. You get a whole different understanding of Maze Runner. You get a whole different understanding of Divergent. Each one of them, I believe, 3 or 4 movies, made a ton of money. Ton of money. But what was it about Divergent and why, and what was the core of it? The one girl who lived in a post-apocalyptic society, many other people, but this one particular one, where when you graduate from your particular level of whatever education they had at the time, and it's really kind of a fascinating show. I mean, I didn't think it sucked. I was kind of pulled into it, and I knew like right away. I was like, "What is this? I want to see this." So if you haven't seen the Divergent movies, or if you haven't seen the Maze Runner movies, I think Divergent more so is more towards it really kind of hits like in the movie when you graduate, when you get to a certain a point of moving to the next level, you get labeled as one of 4 different types of people in society, and that's what you did. Whatever your skill set, whatever they thought your skill set was, you would be assigned to that. But if they deemed you to be more powerful than just this one particular class of people, then you were fucking dangerous. And they called it being divergent. And again, there was 4 different classifications, and then they went to a ceremony, and then in that ceremony they were like, "You're going to be in this group. You're going to be in this group," and everybody would clap, be like, "Oh, you've got a purpose now." But if you had a little bit of all of these characteristics, you were dangerous, and they called it being divergent. And if you're divergent, then they extinguish you. And then, of course, there's people that are inside the society, and it's just like Game of Thrones to a certain extent, but a little bit different outside. Above the wall in Game of Thrones, you were considered the free folk. You weren't part of the 7 kingdoms. You were, Christ, I can't even think of what the people were. They were considered. They called themselves the free folk, and they were. Christ, I forget. But anyway, if you're above the law, you're the free folk. You're outside of the 7 kingdoms. You're not highborn. You're lower than lowborn. And of course, they would practice against you. They would protect the wall from these people that just lived in nature. They lived off nature. They had no. At one point, they had a king, and it was the only reason that they had a king is because they knew at some point that they had to bond together. And there were like maybe 5 or 6 different groups that they had to kind of combine together And there was one guy, one really incredible actor that portrayed this guy called Mance Rayder, who used to be on the other side of the wall, and he was part of this thing called the Night's Watch, where you would fight the free folk and anything else that would be a threat to the Seven Kingdoms. And my point being is that there were people outside of Divergent, outside of these, that would live outside of the realm. Now, the realm is something they spoke about inside of Game of Thrones, but the realm, these people lived outside, and they were dirty. They lived off whatever they could find. So the people that didn't fit in at all, and then there were people that were inside the system. Okay, and right now what you're seeing in Los Angeles and homelessness and things like that, that's what these are. You can equate these things. So if you haven't watched any of the Divergent series, there's a lot of young people in it, but it really kind of makes a connection to it, and it's almost like one of those movies that where they have to tell you what they're doing to you. They have to explain to you what they're doing to you. And so this woman graduating, bringing up figures like Taylor Gatto, where he wrote books extensively detailing what public education was, what was being done. Charlotte Thompson Iserby wrote a book that you can get on, the deliberate dumbing down. Just type in the deliberate dumbing down of America, I believe it is. And she was involved in Reagan's educational cabinet. She's much older now. But very, very powerful. Very, very powerful speech from a young woman who understood, who got it and delivered it. And I can only imagine the people that were listening to her. And I guess I want to kind of go over it as she's speaking. So let's try to, let's see, I'm going to pull up something here.
I have no clue about what I want to do with my life. I have no interest because I saw every subject as a study, as work, and I excelled at every subject just for the purpose of excelling and not learning. And quite frankly, I'm very scared. John Taylor Gatto, a retired school teacher and activist critical of compulsory schooling, asserts, we could encourage the best qualities of youthfulness, curiosity, adventure, resilience, the capacity for surprising insight simply by being more flexible about time, text, and tests.
Very key point there. They don't want that. They've never, ever wanted what she just said. They've never, ever wanted that. It's been removed, systematically removed, all of these things that she just mentioned.
Introducing kids into truly competent adults, and by giving each student what autonomy he or she needs in order to take a risk every now and then. But we don't do that. Between these cinder block walls, we are all expected to be the same. We are trained to ace every standardized test, and those who deviate and see light through a different lens are worthless to the scheme of public education.
Okay, so I've experienced this myself. Far from my high school days, I didn't want to be there. I, on some level, knew what it was, and I had to, in my mind, I had to, in my mind, say, how am I even going to get through this? How am I even going to get through this? And the only thing I could think to myself at that time was just one day at a time. One day at a time. And you'd be surprised how fast time goes. From graduation to 30s, 40s, 50s. Time just absolutely disappears.
And therefore viewed with contempt.
Right, view with contempt. Any ideas outside of the narrative, any ideas outside of what everybody has been programmed to believe about our society, their creation. And this was premeditated because there was a time, just like he didn't mention this, the gentleman, the English gentleman, Sir Ken Robinson is his name, where children would say, they would, maybe in the mid 1800s or so, they would say, listen, if you want to come and learn, you come learn, we're going to teach you. Doesn't matter what age you are. You could be, I'm sure that there was probably like 7, 8, 9 when you could actually be like, listen, you're going to listen to what we're saying. You're going to sit there. Don't distract you. I'm sure that there was that level. But there was all different age groups. They didn't classify people and teach them in their own group, in their own age groups. It was broken up. It was there if you wanted it.
Mencken wrote in the American Mercury for April 1924 that the aim of public education is not to fill the young of a species with knowledge and awaken their intelligence. Nothing could be further from the truth. The aim is simply to reduce as many individuals as possible to the same safe level, to breed and train a standardized citizenry, to put down dissent and originality. That is the aim in the United States.
Wow. And again, I've got this here. I'm not exactly sure who this woman is. There's no names. It's just the comments have been turned off. But she puts it point blank. Point blank. So let me go back and...
To illustrate this idea doesn't and awaken their... H.L. Mencken wrote in the American Mercury for April 1924 that the aim of public education is not to fill the young of a species with knowledge and awaken their intelligence. Nothing could be further from the truth. The aim is simply to reduce as many individuals as possible to the same safe level, to breed and train a standardized citizenry, to put down dissent and originality. That is the aim in the United States.
1924. 1924. H.L. Mencken. I wonder how this all went over. But I'm sure she took incredible backlash from what she was saying. But here's the thing. For her to be able to speak at the level that she was probably very held in such high regard, that the culmination of all her time and all of her experiences, and of course, the ability of her to be divergent and reach outside of what we're all told to believe, how we're all told that we should act, how we should all... Okay? She dropped this bombshell because here's the thing. If people know what you're about, they're going to try to stifle you. They're going to try to stifle you. And I imagine She took a lot of, but probably, hopefully, this was very strategic for her to accumulate this information and then just to drop this fucking bomb on her classmates and the school. I don't even know what school it was. Okay, I don't even know. Let's listen to more of this absolute goddess of a woman with a fully functional brain.
To illustrate this idea, doesn't it perturb you to learn about the idea of critical thinking? Is there really such a thing as uncritically thinking? To think is to process information in order to form an opinion. But if we are not critical when processing this information, are we really thinking? Or are we mindlessly accepting other opinions as truth? I must retrain myself and constantly remember how insane this ostensibly sane place really is. And now here I am in a world guided by fear, a world suppressing the uniqueness that lies inside each of us.
A world guided by fear. A world guided by fear. And that's what they do. That's what this system does. From nuclear weapons to disease that they create, that they've inflicted on people. Knowing that certain objects, certain topics of discussion, bombs, nuclear weapons, things like that, could be used to control people, to control their emotions, to keep them living in fear, to destabilize their way of thinking. And it's quite possible that there's so many people out there that have never had an original fucking thought in their head. That have never had an original thought in their head. This is what they are and they are continuing to do, and that they have accomplished to a great extent, to create one type of person. That's what this entire system of education and indoctrination and distraction has been for years. And brilliant minds like Mencken in 1924 saying, among other things that he wrote that were spot on about the world at the time, and it's just gotten worse here. Almost 100 fucking years later, Mencken's words are being repeated and so spot on fucking accurate. So spot on accurate. And then you see why these college students are weaponized. They're absolutely weaponized by these groups. By these groups that steal your money, that lend you money that doesn't exist, and then you have to pay it back, so you live in fear of getting a job. She said, I'm very scared. I'm very frightened.
A world where we can either cleave to the inhuman nonsense of corporatism and materialism or insist on change. We are not enlivened by an educational system that clandestinely sets us up for jobs that could be automated, for work that need not be done, for enslavement without fervency for meaningful achievement. We have no choices in life when money is our motivational force. Our motivational force ought to be passion, but this is lost from the moment we step into a system that trains us rather than inspires us. We are more than robotic bookshelves, conditioned to blurt out facts we were taught in school. We are all very special. Every human on this planet is very special. So aren't we all deserving of something better? of using our minds for innovation rather than memorization, for creativity rather than futile activity, for rumination rather than stagnation. We are not here to get a degree to then get a job so we can consume industry-approved placation after placation. There is more and more still. The saddest part is that the majority of students don't have the opportunity to reflect as I did. The majority of students are put through the same brainwashing techniques in order to create a complacent labor force working in the interests of large corporations and secretive government. And worst of all, they are completely unaware of it. I will never be able to turn back these 18 years. I can't run away to another country with a different education system, perhaps meant to enlighten rather than condition. This part of my life is over, and I want to make sure that no other child will have his or her potential suppressed by powers meant to exploit. His or her potential suppressed by powers meant to exploit and control.
Precisely.
Every country on earth at the moment is reforming public education. There are two reasons for it. The first...
And that's always, and it always is this default jump back point for so many. They always blame education. They always blame education. You'll see it, you hear it, any number of times you'll hear, well, we have to figure out, this or figure out that. We got to figure out, why. There's documentaries I never saw. It was called Waiting for Superman. I guess I probably should watch it. But again, it's a expose of how fucked up the education system is. And there's two reasons for it. This guy points out, but education. They say education is the key. Education. No, indoctrination is the key. Education is indoctrination. That's all it is in America. That's all it is in America. Get you into the schools. They can do anything they want with you. Make up fake, outbreaks of disease so that they can jab your kids full of toxins and poisons. Aluminum, antifreeze, infectious proteins that lie dormant in your body and wreak havoc on other proteins. And that's what we all are. We are all proteins, but that's for another show. Public education, they always use it as an excuse. And it never gets any better. And then they create other markets by creating these other school systems. I can't think of what they are. That they create these new schools that not all kids can go to. I forget what they're called, but I'm going to listen to a little bit more of this. I know we listened to this in the beginning. But repetition is the only way that people are gonna understand how these things are done. So that's why I'm going back over.
Most of them is economic. People are trying to work out how do we educate our children to take their place in the economies of the 21st century. How do we do that? Given that we can't anticipate what the economy will look like at the end of next week, as the recent turmoil is demonstrating. How do we do that? The second, though, is cultural. Every country on earth is trying to figure out how do we educate our children so they have a sense of cultural identity and so that we can pass on the cultural genes of our communities while being part of the process of globalization. How do we square that circle? The problem is they're trying to meet the future by doing what they did in the past. And on the way, they're alienating millions of kids who don't see any purpose in going to school. When we went to school, we were kept there with a story, which is if you worked hard and did well and got a college degree, you would have a job. Our kids don't believe that. And they're right not to, by the way. You're better having a degree than not, but it's not a guarantee anymore. And particularly not if the
they got the
route
money,
to
that's
it
for sure.
marginalizes most of the things that you think are important about yourself. And some people say we have to raise standards as if this is a breakthrough. You know, like, really, yes, we should. Why would you look?
No Child Left Behind, which was another one of these, Bush administration tactics, was to dumb down the entire curriculum so that children with lesser abilities, with lesser cognitive excellence, could achieve while bringing down. So that's how they did. They focus on and make it look like they care so much about children that are not very intelligent, which this system has created. The system has created this group of people, so then they double, triple, quadruple fucking down on it by implementing No Child Left Behind. Now, I'm not saying people should not be educated, but what they do is, and that's another thing, we want to kind of keep you in the age group that we're educating you in, sorry. And so in order so that you don't get left behind, so that the system doesn't see how bad things have gotten, we're going to make it even worse by holding back those who have the ability to do a differential equation, as opposed to those who 2 + 2 = Jello. And of course, with the new education system, Bill Gates is behind, where they're doing all this fuzzy math, and and this is how they're going to teach people in the future. It's just more of look what we've done to these lesser than us. And we have to continue to destroy their minds. We have to continue to not only to destroy their minds with movies and television shows that are just fucking garbage, where they send their divide and conquer programs and algorithms and things of that detriment into the programming. They have to continue to do the damage because it's about wiping us out. It's about destroying us, and watch us destroy each other. They don't fucking care about you. They really don't.
Lower them. I haven't come across an argument that persuades me of lowering them. Breakthrough. It's not a guarantee anymore. And particularly not if the route to it marginalizes most of the things that you think are important about yourself. Some people say we have to raise standards as if this is a breakthrough. Like, really, yes, we should. Why would you lower them? I haven't come across an argument that persuades me of lowering them. But raising them, of course we should raise them. The problem is that the current system of education was designed and conceived and structured for a different age. It was conceived in the intellectual culture of the Enlightenment and in the economic circumstances of the Industrial Revolution. Before the middle of the 19th century, there were no systems of public education. Not really. I mean, you could get educated by Jesuits, if you had the money.
Yeah, you want to be educated by them. This gentleman is really kind of, he's pointing some things out, and they are relevant, and then he drops like little Easter eggs from time to time. He doesn't get he gets to the core of it, but he's not looking at that this was intentional. He's looking at, this was designed, and you mean to tell me that they never changed it, they never updated it, they never. No, this was done on purpose. He's not really truly going to say that because people don't want to talk about conspiracy. People don't want to talk about conspiracy because if you talk about conspiracy, then there's something wrong with you. Another destructive algorithm that was put in to make people that question known liars, that question those that have lied to us in the past, you question authority, like the young woman said, you're no good to the system. You're a rogue program. You're divergent. You can't. And of course, that's what people still do to this day. You speak of things that people don't know about. Right away, they're like, they have to attack you. They have to attack you because it's not what their program states. Their objective. What is your objective? And it's everything that this woman said. The objective is to make you like everyone else. Everyone else. And do it for the longest period of time. They succeed when they make someone a doctor. They succeed when they make someone a lawyer. Because these two people in society are at the core, because most lawyers become politicians, at the core of the destruction, the blueprint for global enslavement. And, I'm kind of pulling a couple things here from good old Allie Jones, who's completely lost his mind. And, it took a little while for a lot of people to understand what Jones is, what he has been, what he is now. He's, just a total, he brings things to the table. He brings important, very, very, he had Gatto on, he has all these people on. And then he is very vague and throws in fantastical shit that destroys any kind of credibility that he had, if he ever had any. So largely, all of these people, and you see it, you just see, and then it continues and goes into how medical schools and their schooling in general transform these people into charming, cold-hearted sociopaths, wasps that sting you with poisons that are premeditated to destroy. And many people say that they're experimenting. They experiment largely on the military. And then, if you become a soldier and you go and you fight and you do the things that you're supposed to do for your country, their corporation, the corporation nation, then you come back and you get forgotten. They don't want to turn you into a killer and then continue to, they provide the Veterans Administration so many scandals, so many why this and why that, why this and why that. They're there to finish the job. They finish the job. Veterans are homeless. They are sick and dying from the pits, from the smoke pits, the chemical pits, the fires that they burn constantly over there. That Jon Stewart, got to give Jon Stewart kudos on what he did over the last couple weeks to point out the burn pits, exactly. And people are dying. And who's bringing this to light? RT documentaries bringing it to light. The burn pits. The author of the burn pits. Injecting them with in the Gulf War. Books written about the Gulf War vaccine A. People are being murdered. They're being fucking experimented on and fucking murdered. And the cowards in this country, the grown men, the cowards, that deny it, the cowards that go along to get along. And that's basically what America has become. Go along to get along. Get weaponized in college. Get weaponized on the left. Get weaponized on the right. More so on the left. Create garbage people. Weapons. Create weapons to send that Henry Kissinger said monkeys for foreign manipulation, foreign wars, foreign policy, monkeys. That's what he called you. It's what he called you. Any veteran out there that hears this. Okay? They don't care about you, and it shows that the Veterans Administration is letting them die, injecting them further with chemicals and toxins. 9/11, first responders getting completely, 18 years later, getting completely railroaded. Where most of these politicians don't even show up when all of the first responders come to DC to have a hearing, and they're not getting the help that they need. They're not getting the support that they need from a system that said never forget. Never forget. And how could Christy Todd Whitman know that it was or wasn't safe down there? Just more deception, more deception, more and more and more. And it just continues and continues and continues. And if you talk about it, you become that guy or that lady that fucking that is pointing out inconvenient truth. Nobody wants it. They just want to sit back and be what this young woman said that the schooling and the education system creates. They create worthlessness, obedience, fearful people. How medical schools transform doctors into cold-hearted sociopaths. After more than 3 years of medical school, I am strongly convinced that medical school is good training for sociopathy. If you are a normal, empathetic person, you may graduate with sociopathic tendencies. If you are a full-blown sociopath, you cannot emotionally relate to others. You lie, you cheat without remorse. Your goal justifies your means. You torture animals for fun, etc. There's different levels of sociopathy. You may learn how to fit perfectly into society. And you see this if you've ever dealt with doctors. Urologists, whatever. These people, some of them have some level of something, but they get indoctrinated into being sociopaths on any number of levels, from 1 to 10. From 1 to 10. If you're a sociopath, it makes sense to become a doctor. When you become a doctor, people will automatically trust you, since you are some kind of authority figure. If people trust you, you can more easily deceive them. Failing to become real authority figures, some sociopaths would even fake their credentials. You're probably asking how I would know. Let me see. I'll brighten the screen up a bit. Even if I was, would I admit it? But let me ease your mind with a personal story. Now, this is over at, if you go to medicalschoolsuccess.com, how to get into and survive medical school. So they teach you, now that they control every doctor, and doctors can't even really do a third of their work and help people for free anymore, which is what a lot of these oaths, and at one time a third of your work had to be done for free. But again, regular school, medical school, you get indoctrinated, you work for the drug companies, you push drugs for the drug companies, you get pharmaceutical hotties, beautiful young women that become pharmaceutical reps that come in and give drugs for free, and vacations and everything that you can even think of. The perks of being a drug pusher, a legalized drug pusher. So largely, these are the things that when you hear about education, raising standards, all this other stuff, this is all a joke. This entire system is one big experiment. And you are, and I are the lab rat. I guess it depends on what level of lab rat you want to fucking be. I guess it depends. When it comes to technology, the Googles and the Facebooks and the Microsoft and the IBM and the Apple and all of these other companies that are thriving. They're thriving because they were handpicked to be on the front edge. Cisco, all of these tech companies, and they are parasitic. We can see what's happening. We can see why it's becoming so apparent now with the shutting down of speech. The Crown Corporation is in control. Controls every aspect. When you hear things about states seceding, no way. That's all garbage. It's bullshit. All the states are sub-corporations of the United States Corporation, which is a sub-corporation of the Crown Corporation. This is the way it's set up. It's all about commerce. That's why the internet was .com. And these are the things that people need to understand. Largely, there is no, you don't have a voice. But man, the indoctrination has just been so good. The indoctrination just so good so that people actually believe that voting is their duty, is their right. And so, technology, getting to the, and I want to say in a couple weeks, I'm going to have an author on to talk about, 5G, to talk about artificial intelligence, quantum computers, things like that. And it's going to be interesting because I've heard some of his interviews, and he really kind of is just kind of calling it how it is. Really just kind of laying it out there that we are part of an experiment, that we are being tested on. And the injections. I even heard something this week from someone saying that even the, and I've heard, if you've listened, who Patrick, if you listen in the past, who Patrick Jordan is. Yeah, and Patrick Jordan threw out a number of, he sends out multiple emails every day. One of them centered in on a guy talking about, what is it? The vitamins with that they add in. What the heck is that substance? It's Christ, I can't even think of it. Its ingredients, some kind of it's not silicone. It's silica. And the silica is in there. And what the silica does is it gets into your body and it starves your cells from even uptake, any kind of uptake of the nutrients that you And it doesn't even have to be from the vitamin, that the silica builds up in your body. So if you go out there and you get any vitamin, and you're getting any vitamin whatsoever, steer away from anything that has silica in it. Steer away from anything. Now, I'm not sure about the magnesium stearate. Some of the magnesium stearate, they say, could come from GMO sources. But the silica, there's a bulksupplements.com out there that will sell powders and things like that they do not, I believe they do not put silica in. Steer far from silica. I mean, for the longest time, life extensions, speaking highly and, about that organization, silica, and pretty much all of their, I'm going to write to them too. I'm gonna write to them. I'm gonna be like, yeah, you guys, there's no way. And maybe they do, or maybe they don't know it. Okay. The silica packs that people put. I mean, that should be it. You shouldn't have to put it into the capsule. But anyway, he pointed out that silica gets into your body, it bioaccumulates, and then it starves your cells from being able to pull in the nutrients that your body's taking, which makes a whole lot of sense now. Makes a whole lot of sense now. So steer away from silica. SILICA. And there's a lot of vitamins out there that don't use it, like Garden of Life, which is one that I've been pure, I believe. Pure encapsulations. Does not have silica in there. So I even bought some chewable digestive enzymes that had silica in it. And it's like, so there's one to grow on. So when we realize that the education system is here to create a cookie cutter society, and that they always go back to education being the problem. Yeah, education is a problem. People not realizing that the entire education system, from cradle to grave, you have to learn how to teach yourself. You have to figure out what's going on yourself, because this entire system and everybody that supports it, it is like the Matrix. Just like Morpheus said to Neo, until these people realize what it is, they are your enemy. They are an enemy to you, because they will support the system no matter what it does. They will support it hook, line, and sinker. Doctors, nurses, lawyers, and now we're getting to the point where automation and jobs being automated away. On the roads, it started with Easy Pass. Now, there's still people there that are collecting money, but not for much longer. Maybe one or two people to kind of control the flow, but largely gone. Read an article last week about Microsoft, and a lot of these high-tech companies are laying off people in America and opening up facilities in the Middle East. Israel. People losing jobs in tech companies here, Microsoft, any number of them, and most people aren't going to relocate to the Middle East, okay? And then jobs are opening up over there, and so there's another one. So thanks, President Trump, for that one. I'm not one to sit here and pick on him, but he's taking it in the ass. He's taking it in the ass. So, all right. So, I guess the title of this documentary, this program, this podcast will be education, indoctrination as education in America. Let me see what we got here. A little bit of time here. I'll start incorporating a little bit of my music in there in the beginning. There's probably about 5 minutes of just a little bit of picking and plucking. And I'm going to throw a little bit more of that in there. But I definitely got a good hour and a half here on this particular topic alone. It's a very, very important topic, indoctrination. But people they can't understand how saturated and how just completely premeditated that the entire system is. If you're controlling the world, if you're a number of three corporations that pretty much control most of the world, you're going to control education. There's no reason that government would control education other than to do what they're doing. And of course, you got the conservative and the right that, we want small government. Okay. The left wants big, huge government because they're super educated. But I mean, you point out there's any number of people that in news. I mean, one of the if you get on if you get your own news program, you're going to toe the line. That's all America is. Are people just going along to get along? Doesn't matter what kind of information they hear. Doesn't matter how powerful the information is. They just don't care. You will be wiped out. Your families will be wiped out. And wiped out could be anything. Having your job. I'm going to do the Alex Jones, they're going to rape you with battery acid. But being wiped out is just another, your job being automated away. Or this new universal income that they want to start throwing at people. It's just their way of trying to control things before they, drop the big, the big bug. They have to be able to say, to people that have no education whatsoever, that can't do anything. And like the man said, a degree doesn't guarantee anything anymore. But you'll see it. I mean, you see this hubris with people. I sit there and I'm watching. I watch a lot of different platforms. You've got that Steven Crowder, who turns out that he's pretty much a monster. That he used this guy. He made a goofy computer character out of him. He was I think he was German or something like that. Now there's legal battles going on regarding this guy who and then when it was pointed out that, hey man, I want to get paid for what I do, and then this Crowder guy is like, I made you. I made you what you are, you know. And that's what I mean, like the sickness of what is going on out there, the sickness of guys like Crowder. And I'm not saying in any way saying pull him off the air. No way. Keep on, you know, people know who you are. If you listen to a little bit of that Owen Benjamin guy, he'll tell you who this guy is. The system will police you out of existence. It's what happened with Owen Benjamin. He got wiped out because he spoke out about, you know, kids being transgender, transeducated, if you will. And I have nothing against transgender people at all. But this whole thing about, you know, children shouldn't even know about that type of thing. Children shouldn't even know about that type of stuff. But that's not the world we live in. Everyone's under attack. Everyone's under attack, whether it's medically, educationally, politically, sexually, under attack in every aspect of our world. There is divide and conquer going on. There's people at each other's throats, and that's what they want. That's what they love. Because they're not focusing on the real enemy of humanity, which is the Crown Corporation. Constant war, poisoning paradise, DuPont, and if you go to just go to Google, type in poisoning paradise. There's a documentary out there on RT. I'm not saying that RT is great. I watched a little bit of a economic summit that was going on there in St. Petersburg, and they were talking about the UN's 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. Any number of them, the speakers, and if you're speaking there, then you're kind of a big deal in the economic arena, you know. And all they're talking about is sustainable development, UN 2030 agenda. Scary. So I'm not saying that, and there's a reason for everything. So Poisoning Paradise, among other incredible documentaries that are on there, they go into Kauai, all these biotech, BioAgra, DuPont, any number of these different companies, land owned by private landowners. They don't even know who they are, which goes back to what Clint Richardson talked about when it came to private and public citizens, the way that the system really works, people that are citizens on the citizen slave ship, and then people that are private citizens that don't have a Social Security card, that essentially don't exist. They can really call themselves whatever they want. Like Barack Hussein Obama. So, Poisoning Paradise, they're over there. They're spraying sometimes up to 20 different. I mean, basically, it's a experimentation ground in one of the most Hawaii, one of the most beautiful. I mean, there's a lot of beautiful places in the world. On the plain, Hawaii, Kauai, and they're getting indoctrinated with these toxins. It's just Pierce Brosnan's wife who grew up in Kauai, is the point person, got Pierce Brosnan to become the executive producer, and they are there, and they are like, we gotta do something about this. So I looked forward to see if I could see it in full. I only saw like a half hour of it because you can't really on RT. It's always documentary or show, and then at the top of the hour, news, and then either Kaiser Report or watching the Hawks with those fucking knuckleheads over there. They mean well, but there's a lot of just ridiculousness that goes on with that show. I mean, I like Terrell, but he never takes it far enough. He doesn't really take things far enough. Any kind of awareness is good awareness, but you find out so many markets have been created. I've been talking with someone who's been a JFK researcher for a number of years, saying that a lot of these people that have come out of the woodwork, like Judith Berry Baker, are writing books, and that's just all bullshit. Just creating markets so that they can sell books. And of course, at the same time, this market disinforms, mutates things, makes people think that things went on that didn't go on. But that's the way of the world. Create markets, parasitic markets. And that's what the entire medical, political system is. Just parasites. Absolute parasites. Living off of the goyim, living off of the proletariat, sucking the life out of, taxing. Just garbage. And we sit back and we take it. We sit back and we defend it. Defend. And it's really ridiculous. It's really just tiring. Super tiring. Let's see here. Let's see what we got here. So again, you see why here on weekending. I think the 23rd or the 24th. This will air. Let's see what we got here.
110, 220 rounds a minute, try to stop them. Don't put that on your wish list, that's retarded babble. Protesters make the hit list soon as they start to rabble. They are nothing but fishes in the barrel. It doesn't have to be Christmas for a carol. Some decorate with ornamental decorum. Some perform shock and awe on Hanukkah and Purim. That's where my job come in. I am a blessing to the mercenary for the corporation selling weapons to them. Any potential competitor step into them. I'm authorized to knock them out and stick a GPS into them. They want to sell uranium to Iran. That's enriched, that's a bitch. Now we gotta teach a lesson to them.
You are listening to UCY.TV. Why don't you stick around for more awesome radio?